We want to welcome to the show Samah Huriwai Seger. Samah was on with Mr. Plunket today, but that's not why we've got you here, Samah. We're not here for you to shortle over Sean Plunket because you are an activist and you are someone who wants to speak to the media and you want to be involved with the media and have them as a platform. Your microphone is currently muted, Samah, so you'll just need to unmute that as well. And so we're not asking you to do that. If Chewy and I do it, that's a bit different, but we actually want to talk to you about why you were on the platform today. In fact, let's just do that. We've got some audio to play from the show, but actually that's more of a commentary on the media. What we do here, Samah, sometimes is we like to commentate on the commentators. That's one of the things we do. So that part of the conversation, I think we'll just do after we've thanked and moved on. But why don't you tell us, first of all, Samah, who you are, where you're from, and we've had your husband on before. We did some work with Pere, especially when it came to the dairy industry. I know that was a bit of a fun time that Pere had. But why don't you tell us who you are and the situation that you got yourself into today and why you were talking publicly about the issues that you're passionate about at the moment. To you.
Kia ora korua. Thank you for having me on. So we went on the platform today. We knew what we were getting ourselves into, as one of his supporters said to us. Sean's a bit of an aggressive interviewer,
one word,
to say the least. Yeah. We expected as much, and we were happy to go on the platform and speak to the other side. And I don't like to see it as sides, but it's being seen as sides. So definitely want to soften that kind of divide and just show people that we're open to talking to anyone. So yeah, I'm happy that we went on.
So I've got an image from a particular event that happened in Orewa. And I believe this is this isn't the video. This is just an image. This is an image from the video that someone took at the speech in Orewa. And you were talking to Sean about that because this is Julian Batchelors, I guess, tour of New Zealand, talking about the evils of co-governance. And you guys have been doing a lot of work countering that bullshit, countering that rhetoric. And Chewy and I haven't really got into this conversation a lot at the moment. We've both said we want to start talking about this and looking at this and pointing this out and broadcasting about this. So you're really our first chance to talk about this sort of one-on-one, other than a cursory look over it. So give us a bit of a heads up as to what that event was and maybe what the tour is about and what you guys are trying to do to counter some of the points that are being talked about in these public meetings.
Right. So this guy, he has a little bit of a history in Te Rāwhiti with the community there, because he owns the land that he owns and is developing is an old Māori settlement. And parts of it are on a cemetery, and it's right near really sacred sites, and there are sacred sites on there. So the community are invested in him not causing any environmental destruction. And while you can imagine what this guy is like with his community just by, watching his performances at his meetings,
Yep.
But he's been a menace to that community, and he's just completely disrespected the community and everything that they've asked for, like chopping down a 150-year-old pahurikawa tree that was really important to the hapu, and building a giant bank that sent a whole bunch of earth down on the cemetery, and a very long list. Actually, the saga's been going on for years and years. Anyway, in his own words, this has triggered his current movement, which is basically a reincarnation of his evangelism. Is that how you say it? Evangelism?
Look, let me come in here because I know a bit about Julian Batchelor back in the 1990s. He was working with a group called Operation Jerusalem. The Operation Jerusalem had some really interesting and some things that weren't necessarily bad about them. They were the guys that if you were a teenager in the 1990s and you saw like a tent in a in a campground around New Zealand at a beach place, and the kids went and did kids programs during the day while the parents got pissed and went playing in the surf. Those tents were run by a group called Operation Jerusalem, typically 16 to 22-year-old young Christian people looking after kids at a campground. That was a part of what Julian Batchelor was involved with. He then spent the next 10 or 15 years, as you say, evangelizing in his own style as to his beliefs and his thoughts on, eternal question. So that's a little bit about who he is. But yeah, so that's what he was in and what is about Samah.
Yeah, and it's interesting. It's these people getting into spaces where they can influence children is pretty scary, and we can say the same about the funders of the platform. But anyway, that's another story.
It's a good story, though.
Yeah, it is. It's something I'd like to know a little bit more about. But yeah, so Julian, now he's just taken pretty much the same package that he used to give when he gave his Christian talks. Like if you compare them side by side, they're very similar in content. He's just gone and switched the enemy from whatever it was before in the Christian world, sin or whatever.
Yep.
And now it's like Nanaya Mahuta, basically. And He Puapua and Māori in general. And yeah, so he's spreading just outright lies and misinformation. He's trying to redefine the Treaty of Waitangi and say it means something different. It's pretty much just conspiracy theories about the treaty, mixed with just outright racism. And he's inciting violence. Like he says stuff like, we're at war, we should riot, this like really intense language, essentially calling his supporters to war.
Yep.
I don't know. I think that counts as inciting violence, but the police are ones that have to press charges on that kind of thing. So
yep. As you're talking, we're seeing some video imagery from News Hub as to, I think this was the Aotearoa meeting, but yeah, what I'm quite interested to hear from you as well about is specifically, so I don't know Julian's message. I haven't read up on it. But it seems that the typical person who is against co-governance is basically saying, how should unelected bodies get 50% control of things like Three Waters? That's the typical phrase, the typical, I guess, narrative you have. You guys are putting out information countering some of the points. Can you give us something to hold on to, which is some of the things they're saying that are wrong, like educate us, and some of the things that what you're seeing is appropriate and the right way to be operating in society in New Zealand legislatively in 2023?
Right. Well, there's a really wide spectrum in the anti-co-governance movement. Like Julian's points are just wild. I mean, he just makes wild conspiracy theories. There's kind of like, there is a point to countering that, just so people know how far he's going. But what is more dangerous is more the kind of mainstream anti-co-governance narratives that we get, which is, like you say, like, oh, it's going to be 50-50 ruling over all of us. Co-governance is basically what we have right now in some parts of the country, over parks or over waterways. It's a system that has worked in some places, but for other iwi and hapu, they've said that it's not really working. And you can imagine why, because it's the exact same system. It's susceptible to corruption. It's susceptible to the problems of capitalism and just everything, all the problems that come with current structures and how they set up boards to determine outcomes. But then putting some iwi members in there, it's not necessarily going to solve the problem. So you can imagine that in a lot of these situations, the co-governance model isn't enough to actually make any meaningful difference.
Yeah. So
we can and we should criticize that, but that's good faith criticism of being like, oh, how can we be even better treaty partners so that it's actually meaningful for Māori and actually makes a meaningful change for their lives. So in my view, I think it's better to enhance self-determination of Māori as opposed to try and include more Māori within the current colonial system. However, I'm not going to go out like targeting any kind of step along the way to getting self-determination, everything that we do is just a part of the conversation. It's a part of our journey. So these, small examples of co-governance, they're not quite the end goal. So it's interesting that we're getting so much pushback on it, even though it's kind of small steps along the way, like if you look at Three Waters and it's just a board that has 50% iwi, 50% crown, but then that board picks a board that makes the decisions. It's like so far disconnected, and it's just about infrastructure. It's not even about the waterways. The whole thing has just been blown out of proportion, and they've relied on racism to do that. You know, like when you have 3 Waters billboards and you have a big picture of Nanaia Mahuta on there and sexism, you're playing on people's preconceived stereotypes about Maori and about women, and you're mixing in a little bit of fear mongering and a little bit of misinformation. You put it in a package together, and it seems to trigger people. It seems to work, this formula that they're using. So yeah, but Julian's his arguments are just wild.
I've got one other question. Sure, I know that I've been monopolizing this time. You jump in after I'm done if you want. But here's my last question, and it's to do with the treaty in particular, right? We are constantly hearing that Māori did cede sovereignty, that Māori didn't cede sovereignty, the two sides. Now, my understanding is, especially in law, that if you're signing a contract with an Indigenous people, then you go by the Indigenous version. And if people don't understand that, it's like this. If you only speak English, let's say, and you had a French company coming to you, and the French company wanted you to sign a contract. So they wrote a contract in French and they wrote a contract in English. And you sign the English version because that's the language you can understand. And the French version says something really different. And then they try to use the French version as the basis of the truth. It's the other, as I understand it in law, it's the other way around with the treaty. So sort of the Māori version of the treaty is the one that takes priority, because obviously Māori understood the Māori version more so than the English version. So my long-winded question is really this. Within the Māori version of the treaty, written in Māori, what did it say specifically about ceding sovereignty or not?
The Māori version is very clear that they maintain tino rangatiratanga. And the Māori version is the version that was signed. And like you say, it's very simple contract law stuff. The version that's signed is the one that counts.
Yep. And
if the Crown is now trying to say that it doesn't count, well, that doesn't mean that we automatically go to the English version. That means the whole thing doesn't count. And if that's the case, well, we've got here whakaputanga, which is our other constitutional document. We have 3 constitutional documents in Aotearoa. One of them is he whakaputanga, and one of them is Te Tiriti o Waitangi. And he whakaputanga also affirms Māori self-determination. And in he whakaputanga, it says the chiefs of the confederated tribes. That's the title of the signing party in he whakaputanga. That's the exact same title that was used in Te Tiriti o Waitangi that we're signing it. So Te Tiriti o Waitangi affirms he whakaputanga, because by the time Te Tiriti o Waitangi was signed, the confederated tribes were already operating as a sovereign nation under that title. They had their own flag, the he whakaputanga flag, and they were already trading. So when they came to sign the treaty, they used that title as a sovereign nation. And the treaty was meant to work alongside he whakaputanga, you know, because that's, again, simple contract law. When you sign another contract, it doesn't erase the other contract. You just read them together, and you're meant to interpret them against each other as well. So it's very clear. But even if it wasn't, it's kind of a funny, like they're trying to catch them out.
Yeah.
You know, like ethically, it's not okay to just say, no, we got you on this document. It's too late. Like, we have to rule over you forever now.
All right. Now, I know we haven't shouted and screamed at you and talked over you in this conversation. I hope you're comfortable with our more relaxed style compared to what else you might have got today, Samah.
Yes, it's nice. It's relaxing.
Anything else, Chewy, before we let Samah go and go have a look what Karen Plunket got up to this afternoon?
Yeah, look, I've been following what this Batchelor guy is going around, and just the clips that I've seen, like, it's not even dog whistling racism. It's just a really out and out vile anti-Māori narrative. it seems to be all based around, what is it they found? They found like a draft version of the treaty in somebody's wall somewhere, and they're like, oh, it's the one true treaty that we found in 1989 for some reason
that no one signed, so it's not
yeah,
legally
that
binding.
no one signed. But yeah, it's I went to his website and I noticed that he's put a splash message out there that was just really shocking, because it's the classic. It's like, oh, I'm not talking about all Māori. I'm just talking about the Māori elites, the ones that are making lots of money.
He might as well be saying, I'm not racist because I've got some Maori friends. That's basically the same flash, isn't it?
I mean, I saw that and I was like, look, if you take the word Māori out of there and put Jew, like that wouldn't be too far away from 1928 Berlin somewhere.
Yeah, it's a very good point.
Like it's shocking to me, and I'm glad that so many people are combating it. I've been working my way down the list of venues that are mentioned on his website and just emailing the people that are booking it, going, I don't think you want to do this. But yeah, anything that we can do to stop him, I think, is worthwhile.
Let me just say this as well. Lots of people in the chat thanking you for the work you guys are doing. JK says it, Peter says it, Mr. Anderson, kia ora Samah, that narrative needs more air. Vicky says it, thanks a bunch. Emma says it, chirp, the Kiwi colloquialism for kapai, chirp, all of the above. And look, I couldn't echo it more, Freddie, because this when this is kind of the alternative that we're getting.
How would you describe?
So it needs to be done, and you guys are doing good work. And even though we're little, mind you, we might have a new audience, Chewy, like people who are looking for a radio station today that aren't going to have it tomorrow might come and join us. But anything we can do to help your cause, just shout out, scream out, and we'll be here.
Thanks, guys. I appreciate the support, and thank you everyone in the comments. I can't see them from where I am right now, but I will definitely check them out afterwards.
So the Aotearoa Liberation League can be found and looked into where? How do people find out more about what you guys are doing?
We're on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, all of the places.
And a lot of traction on those. People should definitely check them out.
It's going well. It's promising.
Yeah, cool. All right, Samah. Hey, thanks so much for joining us. We really appreciate your time, and keep up the good work.
Thank you, guys. Enjoy the rest of your night.